Welcome to another episode of the Programmatic Digest podcast. We have Kurt Donnell from Freestar on the podcast today, and I'm really excited to talk to you, Kurt. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I am very much looking for this conversation because we're going to talk about a couple things. Talk about emerging tech. What is the new of the new for Freestar, but also from an industry perspective. And then we're going to talk about this really dope, actually those dope programs that you have internally to help your team grow and to help acquire more talent without any limitation. But before we get into those two topics, give us a little bit about who Kurt is, what you do, also how you landed where you landed today.
Yeah, a lot there. I think like most people had a long and winding road into ad tech. I started my career as a lawyer of all things.
Oh,
I
wow,
realized
cool.
sort of cool. Realized about day 3 of that was not my calling in life. So made a pivot after years of that. I actually worked at large law firms for
Oh, wow.
7 or 8 years. Had the chance to work on a bunch of different things. I kind of was a tax attorney against my will for about a year and a half. Long
Oh,
story there
wow.
that we don't have time for today, but really did what I thought I wanted to do for a while, which was be a mergers and acquisitions attorney. Primarily did corporate law, a little bit of real estate along the way, but did that for 7 or 8 years. Realized I really wanted to be on the business side of things. I had this theory in life of going to law school and doing corporate law. You got to help structure these crazy transactions and everything. And I came to find out the business people make all the decisions and the lawyers just write it down. And so I wanted people to be on that building the transaction side, not the writing it down piece. So about, I don't know, a decade ago, maybe actually longer than that now, I had the chance to go in-house at a digital media company. At the time it was called She Knows Media, now She Media, that's owned by Penske.
Oh,
It was
nice.
independent at the time, and so learned the advertising space pretty quickly. Went from being hired as the lawyer to running the business development team, and then
Oh,
ran
cool.
audience development and corporate development, where we bought a bunch of things and sort of
Mhm.
ended up in a COO-ish position at that company. So that's where I cut my teeth on the media side. This was 2012 to 2017 I was there, so it was
Oh,
really
wow.
kind of the time where the rise of programmatic happened, and
Yeah,
so got
like
to see that whole.
big data was hot. Mobile advertising was just starting, I remember.
Oh yeah, video, like
Oh,
the rise of
video,
mobile and the rise of video, and yeah,
YouTube
all
became a
of
little
these.
sexier for advertisers. It was messy,
Indeed.
but it was sexier.
Yeah, so that's how I cut my teeth on it. Left the industry for a couple years, went and helped take a yoga company public, of all
Oh,
things. It was a
nice.
roll-up of yoga studios. So I was flying around the company or country, taking yoga class, buying yoga studios, and
Mhm.
then I guess the ad tech bug was still in me, and had the chance to jump on board as CEO of Freestar about 4.5 years ago. And it's been an amazing ride since then. So interesting journey into and then continuing on into more ad tech.
That is really cool. Okay, cool. So I like to ask that question. How did you land in programmatic? Because most people that I ask this question to always have very interesting stories, just like yours. Like they accidentally landed in ad tech, just like
For
you.
sure.
Or like me, they were lucky enough to find an agency or a company to train them from scratch. So
Yep.
there was no like, I'm going to graduate from programmatic master of something and then find, a job somewhere. So yeah, so I love asking this question. So what is your definition of what you do to like a 5-year-old? So if you had to ask a 5-year-old what Freestar maybe did and what you do at Freestar, how would you tell them?
It's the easiest version, and what my kids would probably tell you is I put ads on the internet, which they find annoying in some of their games. There's that. So that's the most basic version. Is we basically power the ads for the website owners, more or less.
Mhm.
Monetization in a box. They do the content. We do the ads. I think is the easiest thing. Behind that, obviously, there's a lot more details where we actually run the auction. We bring
Right,
the
of course.
bidders into the auction. We optimize the auction for the publisher so that they're maximizing the revenue from every impression they bring to market. But we
Mhm.
essentially take care of all of the hassle of the advertising side of the house so they can focus on content and audience development, which they tend to be the best at.
Got it, got it, got it. So if I had to place you in the Lumascape, you wouldn't be on the SSP side, would you?
We basically look like one gigantic publisher. We represent hundreds
Publisher.
of publishers and thousands of websites,
Mhm.
but we sit below the SSP. We
Mhm.
have relationships with, I don't know, 50 or 60 different SSPs and now some DSPs more directly, but we take care of managing all those relationships, collecting all the revenue from the SSPs, and we cut the publisher a single check at the end of the month. So we kind of get rid of the hassle of them having to maintain their own code, maintain all the relationships, chase the accounts receivable from all of these folks, and really streamline kind of the revenue function for a publisher.
You get down and dirty for those publishers. Got it.
We do, we do. We in some instances are kind of an extension of their team if they have an in-house ad ops team, and in some instances we are the entire monetization team for the publisher.
So I was going to ask in the podcast, what are your take on the most recent headlines, right? So the headlines that I've seen, well, last quarter, I would say Q1 would be the SSP is dying or whatnot. But I find like this topic is now boring. So we're going to talk about something, more promising, more exciting. Like,
Yeah.
what do you see emerging in the industry? What do you think? Like, what's your take, one, professionally, and then also like if you want to share what Freestar stands at. But what do you think about how the industry is moving?
I think it relates a little bit to the SSP point you made,
Mhm.
and I don't think it's the death of the SSP, but I think
I
it
don't
is.
think so too. But when I saw that, I was like, come on.
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, I think
really?
the death of the tier 3 SSP, maybe. I think there is too many people involved that are doing too much reselling. And so I
That's
think my answer to that question is I think we're going through a moment of cleanup right now. I think there's a maturation happening in the market right now where
true.
for a while, either because people on the buy side were naive or were turning a blind eye or something,
Mhm.
there was a lot of waste in the middle of the whole ecosystem, and it allowed SSPs to exist that were only selling to other SSPs. There's not a
Mhm.
lot of real value there. I mean, in certain instances, maybe there was interesting targeting layered on there or something, but I
Yeah.
think a lot of that inefficiency is going to
Mhm.
get cleaned up in the marketplace. And I think the trade desk has certainly been very vocal about this and
Mhm.
cleaning up the supply path. I think supply path optimization is something that was referenced for a while. I think it's actually happening in 2023, which I think is a good thing. And
Mhm.
ideally, it will lead to better outcomes for advertisers, hopefully more dollars in the publisher's pocket. So both sides win here a little bit. I think
Yeah.
for a while, supply path optimization maybe was referenced as it's going to hurt the publisher because it's not sending the same impression through 50 different pipes. But I think if we all do a better job of finding the efficient pipes, eliminating some level of the ad tech tax, both sides can win here. So I've actually
I
been
agree.
pleased to see some of these things happening.
I agree because it's one of our many conversation in our community. So we have a community. Most of them do listen to the podcast, and we just get on calls every Friday discussing industry trends. We do mini trainings for those buyers and sellers and adopts, I would say. And one of the many topics that keep coming up is like the life, like what's the future of the open marketplace?
Mhm.
And one of the reasons why most buyers are so frustrated is because of the quality of what we're getting in the open
Completely.
exchange. And you're right. One of the main reasons is because of that reselling and upselling and
Yeah.
downselling and upgrading of the selling here and there. And one of the exercise we do very often, especially in the program that I mentioned, is that especially in the reach and frequency program, is optimization and the exercise of looking at data providers, like how do we look at the segments performance, or look at the supply vendors, or look at the supply cyclists. Like how do you make sure you cut those sites, and why, and what do you want to cut off, right? Or keep bidding on, of course.
Sure.
And one of the rule of thumb here is like to uncheck, because some DSP give you the opportunity to uncheck resellers.
Yep.
And I always say, like, no matter what the DSP you're using, make sure you uncheck that. It's not always needed, especially for the type of brands we're running. And now you just mentioned this, but brands are no longer looking for impressions. They want very, very targeted, strategic targeting, I would say.
Yeah.
And the big numbers are not always sexy on the report anymore. It's that
Yeah.
bottom line KPI, like the ROAS or the CPA, or I don't
There's
know,
no, I mean,
the something. At least from
there's
a
no
buy
lack
side.
of no lack of inventory out there.
No.
I think there was all of the arbitrage sites are made for advertising, I believe are a nice word we're using for arbitrage now. I think that's getting called out a little bit. And,
Yeah, I agree.
obviously the focus maybe less on reach and more on outcomes or things like that will hopefully clean that piece up too and put the dollars in the hands of quality publishers that are delivering good outcomes for the advertisers. I think there's a cleanup happening in many
Yeah.
ways, which is
Yeah,
good.
I like what you
And
said about cleanup. I think it's important. So how is talk to us about, because I think in our in our intro you talked about how you are internally or as a company looking at machine learning and how to
yeah.
efficiently do things for your clients. So talk to us a little bit about what that means. How do you do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of goes to the supply path thing a
Mhm.
little bit.
Okay.
Different bidders are going to perform better on different sites. And then even within that, obviously, whether they are client side or server side bidding, they're going to perform differently. And so we built some technology that really optimizes which
Yes.
bidders are allowed into the auction. And even as a subset of that, whether they are offered on the server side or the client side, and sort of dynamically selecting the right bidders for the right, not just site, but the right audience
Mhm.
down to almost the user level. And then some other things like dynamic timeouts, for instance, if we can detect somebody's on a slower connection speed, we might want to extend the timeout a little bit,
Oh.
give the chance for more bidders to get in there, more competition, because it's not going to be slowing down the page versus faster. Obviously, we want to make sure that we deliver that impression as quickly as possible and sort of match the site speed. So a number of things like that we're doing in the back end based on billions of data points we have every month across the sites we represent to kind of build what we affectionately call our ideal ad stack technology that brings the right bidder at the right time for the right user. Is really the thing we're focused on, and our data science team has done some amazing stuff there, and a lot more to come.
And how long did it take to really implement or maybe shift the mindset internally? Maybe shift from, because I'm going to make assumption here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but moving from doing this work manually from a team dedicated to doing this to maybe using this machine learning or this AI or this like automation to make
Yeah.
that team efficient, and what happened to this team now?
So it's something that we have been thinking about for years,
Hmm.
building for, I don't know, a year and a half. We acquired a company that had done some good work
Hmm.
in this space and then really implemented. It's been a continual rollout, I guess. Features of this have been rolling out for a while, but taking on more of the true automated dynamic client side, server side optimization has been in the last 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Uh, and you're right, it was very much teams doing this historically. I think it's made
Hmm.
them smarter and be able to focus on
Of
more
course.
strategic things to work on with folks than simply which bidders should be here or not,
Mhm.
which a machine can make that call, right? You can run enough experiments and understand from the A/B test, okay, this one performs better or equally on server side versus client side. So let's kick it over to the server so we don't slow down the page, or
Mm.
we know that this one performs roughly the same client side, server side. So put this one server side so we can give somebody that only performs well client side the opportunity to be client side that wouldn't necessarily be a top 10 bidder otherwise. And those are great machine choices to make and frankly tough for people to do because you don't have the billions of data points and you can't do that. So I think it's letting people do people jobs and machines do machine jobs. And
Mhm.
there is an element of, is AI going to take over the world? No, it's just going to change what people do. Instead of chat GPT, right? Instead of people being writers, they'll become incredible editors or curators of content or those things. So I don't think it gets rid of jobs internally, some of the things we're doing, or externally with this new technology. It just shifts the focus to higher and better use things,
Mhm.
hopefully that are more fulfilling.
Yeah, from a journalism perspective, I hope we never get to the point where AI becomes the writer. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm old school and maybe I love to get a good read from, and I can literally like recognize how certain authors, especially in our trade field, how certain authors write, and I'll be like, oh yeah, this is Alison Schiff from Ad Exchanger, right? I can
Yeah.
pick out some of their style, and I love that. I love that
Yeah.
it gives like their signature writing.
Sure.
And but I absolutely agree with you when it comes to when somebody, I was on a call with a consultant maybe 3 months ago, and she said, Yeah, but your program is how are you going to grow the program when AI is taking over? And I'm like, I hope AI takes over. My program is going to be just perfect for this, because it's now not going to, it's not going to be as much manual work. And AI, like you
Yes.
said, AI is not going to take over like that, guys. Um, I'm a big fan of automation, especially when it comes to making us more effective in what we do and spending less time on things that are not as important and helping us grow.
Yep.
And I do think, like you said, that machine learning or AI is going to help do some of that.
I mean, when you think about the automatable tasks, it's usually the boring things anyways, right? Like who wants to just QA a zillion things or update line items or all of those things?
Yeah,
Usually the automatable things are the worst parts of people's jobs. It's not we're taking away
no, for
the
real.
good
And
things,
that's
you
and
know?
that's why they template everything.
Yep.
At least as a buyer perspective, and I'm pretty sure AdOps does it too, but uh you template what you can so that you don't have to redo the work that was already created. It's not about working hard anymore, it's about working smart. I don't care what people say. And I think the most popular and the most used setting in a DSP is the cloning or the duplicating button. Okay. You've heard
Sure.
it here first, but every single buyer that is listening to this can be like, oh yeah, for sure, I've used the duplicate or the clone buttons way more than anything else, because it's
That's
like, oh,
awesome.
I've already done that, I just need to go update it or edit it, like you said. But
Yep.
I think it's a good segue into the second topic that I really wanted to kind of ask your opinion, your professional thought on, is the growth of talent. That's like, I hear a lot of like, oh, we don't have any talent. And my fight is that no, we have talent. It's just your onboarding is sucky. Literally.
Yep.
That's it. It's like you don't have time. And sometimes some companies just don't have the resource to really help that individual grow or that talent grow. And that's understandable. But talent, there's so much talent from entry level to senior.
Sure.
So you have an internal program where you do a little bit of what we do with the reach frequency, where you hire those individuals and you kind of build them up from scratch,
Mhm.
with the offer of like potentially staying a long time, full time, I mean. But also, I want us to talk about that management, that leadership program that you have. So let's start with like the
Yep.
ADEC, the first one. Like, what is
Yeah,
it?
for
And
sure.
how can people
So
get more information about it too?
yeah, freestar.com/careers, I think is what it is, but just go to our website and go check out the career portion. The Ad Tech Associate Program is what we call it internally, and started a few years ago, actually out of sort of a BDR program where we were hiring junior folks into the sales team. And then we ended up actually having a number of those folks, after being in sort of the sales role for 6 or 9 months, realize they wanted to do something else in the company once they actually learned enough about it.
Oh,
There's
cool.
plenty of sales jobs out there. And so people came in because they understood sales, came into sales, but then they learned about whether it was on sort of the demand side of our business or on publisher operations or something like that, that they're actually interested in transition. So we found
Cool.
these folks that had no formal ad tech experience ended up being incredible employees across the organization, but just had never been exposed to this and had no idea they
Yeah.
wanted to do it. And so we've actually pivoted that, now formalized it. So about every 6 months or so, or I mean 6 or 9 months, I guess, we'll bring in a class of 4 or 5 people from any industry, any experience, anything, that are willing
Yeah.
and interested in learning. And so we put them through a 90-day program where they kind of rotate through the different departments in the company, learn everything from product and engineering to
Oh,
revenue
nice.
operations to sales, and have the chance to sort of sit within those teams. And
Mhm.
then at the end of the program, assuming everything went well, which it has every single time so far, they kind of find their forever home in one of the different teams. And it's ranged from people on the audience development side into people on the publisher operations side, and run the gamut. And these people came in not knowing what they wanted to do, but were fascinated by the industry. And by all accounts, has been wildly successful. So I think it's similar to what you're doing,
Mhm.
and giving people that otherwise wouldn't have ended up in this space a
Yeah.
proper formal training. I think most of us learned it on the job, made it up,
Yeah.
made it up halfway as we were doing it, and
That's the
fake it
word.
till you make it a little bit. We're allowing people to not have to fake it till they make it. They can actually
That's
learn it the right way.
right. Yeah.
So
Practice
it's
what
been
you're
good.
learning.
Yeah.
What is like one of the challenges you still find with some of those people though? Like what would you say,
Interesting
like, oh,
question.
most some of them do struggle with this, or some of them, it takes us a little bit of time when we go through this. I don't know. What is like a challenge or an opportunity?
I think the challenge is I think there's certain groups that people have really enjoyed and maybe wanted to spend some more time in, but to keep the
Okay.
program going, we had to keep it relatively short, where they're with people, I think it's 2 week stints and moving on. So we maybe need to hone that. If it's very clear that somebody has a passion for one thing, maybe we can kind of short circuit things and
Yeah.
move them into that group more quickly. I think it's maybe happened once where the person was like, yeah, I knew this is what I wanted to do the whole time. I think everybody else has really enjoyed the holistic view of things.
Yeah, I like that.
And, we're on our second class right now of doing this. And so, we've got some experience, but not maybe enough to have found the pitfalls or all of the pitfalls yet. And so far, every single person that's come through it has been fantastic. And I think that's an element of it's a little bit of a self-selecting group that is
Mhm.
willing to go sign up for a job, not knowing exactly what you're going to be doing other than learning. And so I think it's a curious type person that does that. And
Mhm.
really one of my very favorite traits to hire for is curiosity. And
Yeah.
so I think it plays nicely there where it's a self-selecting group that puts themselves in, wants to learn, and then ends up being a great employee because they're curious along the way afterwards.
Yeah, curiosity, like always trying to find the answer, investigative. I think it's like, I think it's the new definition of like a self-starter. Like, in order to be
Yeah.
a true self-starter is like you gotta go find the answers on your own, but not be afraid to ask the question.
Yep.
Like I always like to, when I train, I always like to say, like, when you come across a problem or a challenge, like, time yourself. Don't allow this challenge to be to be there for more than like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Maybe 30 minutes should be it. Definitely not more than a day. And then if you're not able to find the answer, then ask somebody. It's about efficiency too. Because I remember as a trader, I would spend a couple days trying to figure it out. I'm like, I must find it. This too shall pass. And then next thing you know, my manager would be like, oh, fam, here you go. And I'm like, oh, should have asked this 2 days ago. Yes, you should have. And he's the one who used to say, like, time
Awesome.
yourself. After 2 hours, just chat me, and then I'll get to it when I get to, things like that. So
Yeah.
time yourself, folks. You don't have to struggle by yourself. And it's
There's,
not too long.
yeah, not too long. We've built some sort of formal escalation paths
Yeah.
around that and
Mhm.
built in sort of that idea that figure this out yourself. And then here's the people you should talk to. If it gets to a certain point, then it gets kind of taken up to this next level of
Mhm.
sort of the leaders in the company. And then we got above them sort of this captain's level who are really the firefighters on these things. And then have built,
Mhm.
I guess it goes to your question a little bit, sort of defined paths of how you go from sort of the individual contributor side of
Good.
things, and then either a senior individual contributor or the more management side of things. I think in the US, we've historically had a problem with if you wanted to get promoted, you had to manage people. And we've realized through the pain and suffering of us all making these mistakes, just because somebody's good at their job doesn't make them a good leader of people doing that job.
Ooh,
And
that's
so we kind
good.
of set up different paths for people to go that way, and then sort of different hierarchies that come with different training and different access to the executive team or coaching. We've got sort of a leadership library of books that we'll send to any of the folks there, additional speaker series and things for the people on these different tracks. And so we've kind of built a level, kind of a leveled system of management training here over the course of last year as well. That's been really helpful. And I guess bring people in with no ad tech and then get them enough ad tech, train them up and kind of move them along a journey is something I think we've done a pretty decent job of. And our
Yes.
retention of employees has been really good as a result.
I mean, honestly, we just talked about it, but the number one reason why people leave is, a toxic environment. Leadership sucks after a while, or things have shifted for them. But number
Yep.
two is a lack of growth. It's like, I don't know if I want to be a manager, or I don't know. I tried being a manager and I was said no so many times, but like, I don't know how to become a manager and there's just no future for me. So let me just first go work for somebody else that's going to maybe pay me a little bit more. And then I
Yeah.
get to be a manager now, because now they're prioritizing the amount of experience I have in years with that leadership role versus, being in a company and starting from scratch or whatever. So I think it's really, really great that you have, and that's part of the leadership program that you mentioned, right? Like anyone in the company has a choice of applying for that, or how does it work? Like, how do you know when it's time for you to be a manager?
Yes, we built a pretty formal process for both promotions and then getting into the more management side of things. We actually presented it to the whole company at our all hands last week. I think kind of piggybacking on some of the things you said, I think a lot of companies are not clear what
Mm,
that path is. And so for any leaders out there, I'd recommend being very transparent about what it takes, both from these are the capabilities and qualities we want in our leaders, but also sort of here's the process.
mm.
We've got some sort of formal mentoring programs in place too, where
Oh, that's
even
good.
before you become a manager of people, you become a mentor of somebody, figure out if you like this thing versus just toss them in the deep end and being like, I love being an account manager, I hate managing account managers. We can figure that out beforehand. Let them be sort of the team lead or take on a mentorship before
That's
we make
good.
the formal reporting structures. So that's an element of things.
Mhm,
Sort
mhm.
of that whole career pathing thing. We've got a whole process where people are encouraged to speak to the manager. These are what I want to do. Here's the
That's
goals
good.
for the next 6, 9, 12 months to get you there, and then kind of more formalized process. But I think it all just comes down to communication and being honest with people of here's the path. Because for better or worse, people will make up the narrative in their head. If you don't tell them
Yeah,
something, they'll make up their own
and make
story about the whole
assumption,
thing.
and then the assumption are most likely negative, unfortunately. Oh, I
Yeah.
cannot grow here and I cannot do this. But sometimes you just have to speak up for yourself and speak out. So I think that's super great. I think it's a great way to close the conversation. So if you wanted to leave us with some wisdom, right? What is something you would maybe share with your freshman self? Something you now know that you wish you knew when you first started in your professional career or in ad tech. It doesn't matter. What's a word of wisdom you want to leave us with?
I think it is that curiosity point. There's two of them. What you
Mm,
just said a little
Stay
bit, the worst they
curious.
can say is no. Like in life, the worst they can say is no. So go ask the question,
Yeah.
find out, hey, I want to be a manager, whatever it is. And if they say actually there's no management potential yet for this, but here's the path, at least you know the answer. Like they can say that. The other piece is that curiosity thing is make sure in your career, whenever you get sort of the weird feeling of like, oh, I'd like to learn more about that, go chase it down a little bit. Don't divert all your energy to that, kind of your point on not spending too long on problems. But if you're curious about how a product management team works, to take somebody out to lunch, grab coffee with them and just understand what
Mm,
does it really mean? Because most
good.
great careers have had twists and turns to them, and people are very willing to share their experience because everybody loves talking about themselves. So make them feel important. Go ask them, how do you do XYZ?
Yeah,
You'd be
that's
amazed
true.
how many people will sit down and have lunch with you. And I've had
Yeah.
the chance to be on both the receiving and giving side of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's fulfilling when you feel like you're helping mentor somebody or figure out their own path. And then on the receiving side of it, you can find out without having to maybe make a mistake and go to a job or a company that you don't want. You can find out a lot just by asking the real questions. So maybe the answer here is just ask. I guess that's maybe the final recommendation for the day.
Yeah, right. I love that. Part of their assignment throughout the program is to do connection via LinkedIn and to take
Yep.
like coffee chats for this reason. It's like I always tell them like people actually love to help at their convenience.
They do.
So if they don't respond to you, don't take it personal. They probably have not checked LinkedIn in a few months.
Yeah.
Or if they do say no, that's also okay. It's like one less no to receive towards that one yes. You only did one yes. And then I always say, like, you'll be surprised. People love to like get on those chat calls, and especially if it's to
Yeah.
help. And then come with specific question, like, what do you think about this? I'm at this part of this program where I'm learning programmatic. What do you think I should do in order to find a job at the end of the program or things like that? So thank you so much for sharing some wisdom today. Thank you so much for sharing how amazing what Freestar is doing. I think is really great. I don't think there's enough program like ours out there. And I really commend y'all for doing such a good work. Like, hey, even though it's 3 to 4 people every 6 months, it's still 3 to 4 people that have that exposure. And it's a great way to test your employees too. Like, this is actually a great person. This is probably not for them.
For sure.
But that's a great way to just really, really grow the company in a way that promotes loyalty, but also what is it? It's not, I forgot the word. I'm gonna leave with loyalty. I'm gonna say with loyalty. I think that's great. So
It
thank
is.
you so much.
I really appreciate the chat here today, and the flip side, I appreciate what you're doing, teaching people how to do this sort of the right way and more holistically, and maybe folks can avoid some of the potholes you and I probably hit along the way.
Oh yeah, I'm really frank in this program. I'm like, this is not your typical YouTube lessons, y'all.
I love it.
But you will find out the good, the bad, the ugly, and the sexy about programmatic. And these are all the mistakes I make. You don't have to make it because here's how I fixed it. So even though it's a little bit focused on the buy side at the moment, it's definitely had great success and it's growing. So I'm really, really proud of where we're heading. But also, like I said, we'll definitely keep in touch with Kurt, because I think he brings a lot of leadership and a lot of wisdom to the industry. So if you have any questions about what Kurt is doing, the Freestar program, I will have all of the links in the show notes of the audio or on the YouTube description. And then if you want to keep in touch with Kurt, I'll drop his LinkedIn. How else can they keep in touch with you, Kurt, if they want to reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. Obviously, there's various links on the website to contact the folks across the organization. So please reach out, whether you are an advertiser looking to advertise or an employee. We've even got a dream job post up there. If you're just interested in learning more about Freestar, please apply, and we will see if we've got the right fit.
Oh, that's super cool. Well, great. Well, thank you again for dropping
Awesome.
by, and we'll talk to you soon.
Indeed, really enjoyed it. Have a great day.